U.S. President Joe Biden says the U.S. is on pace to meet a 31st of August deadline for evacuations, despite previous calls from allies for an extension. "The sooner we finish the better," he said. Some American troops have already been withdrawn, U.S. media report, although evacuations are not effective. At least 70,700 people have been airlifted from Kabul, which fell to the Taliban 9 days ago. The militants have opposed any extension to the evacuation deadline. President Biden said, "The Taliban have been taking steps to help get our people out," adding that the international community will judge the Taliban by their actions. "None of us are going to take the Taliban's word for it," he added. Mr. Biden said the airlift had to come to end soon because of an increasing threat from the Islamic State group in Afghanistan. U.S. fears risk of Islamic State attack in Kabul. "The longer the U.S. stayed in the country," he said, "there was an acute and growing risk of an attack by the group." In other developments, the World Bank halted funding for projects in Afghanistan. He cited concerns over how the Taliban's takeover would impact the country's development prospects, especially for women. The World Health Organization warned there were only enough medical supplies in Afghanistan to last a week. It said attempts to deliver medical supplies had been blocked due to restrictions at Kabul airport. Accommodation website Airbnb promised to provide temporary lodging for 20,000 refugees at no charge to help them resettle across the world. A bitter disappointment for many in Kabul. The staffers were punctual. They moved velvety ropes from the briefing room to the Roosevelt room, and got ready for the president's speech at 12 o'clock, 1600 hours GMT. They set up a sound system, and prepared the stage for an important moment. The president would speak about Afghanistan. But the president was late. He met aides in the Oval Office, worked on his speech. "What's going on?" my colleagues asked, sending me texts, wondering what was happening, and why his speech had been delayed, again and again. They were not the only ones who were wondering. Many people in Kabul were desperate to find out. Finally, the president spoke at around 1700 hours late. Things were on track to end the U.S. mission by 31st of August, he said. His remarks were a bitter disappointment for many in Kabul, who say the mission is far from over, since it leaves them stranded. Backstage at the White House, the president's day, and the lead-up to his speech, were disorganized, unpredictable and chaotic. For many, it captured the essence of his Afghanistan policy, one that they describe as disastrous. Line. Mr. Biden was speaking after leaders of the G7, which consists of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the US, plus the EU, discussed the Afghan crisis during a virtual meeting. The UK and other allies had urged the US to stay beyond 31st of August to allow more relief flights. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who chaired the talks, said Britain would continue to evacuate people until the last moment. He also urged the Taliban to allow Afghans to leave beyond the deadline. "In the city I love, suddenly nowhere was safe." What's the Taliban's record on opium production? European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the G7 leaders had agreed that it is our moral duty to help the Afghan people and to provide as much possible support as conditions will allow. Almost 6,000 U.S. soldiers and more than 1,000 from the UK are at Kabul airport to secure it and organize the evacuation of foreigners and eligible Afghans. Smaller contingents from other NATO members including France, Germany and Turkey are also present. The airlift is being stepped up, with more than 21,000 people evacuated since Sunday. The departure of some U.S. troops ahead of the 31st of August deadline does not affect the mission. One U.S. defense official was quoted as saying by CNN. On Tuesday, 2 members of Congress flew into Kabul airport unannounced, prompting an outcry on social media. Democratic Senator Seth Moulton and Republican Senator Peter Midger were on the ground at Kabul airport for several hours, according to the Associated Press. Earlier on Tuesday, Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said the group would probably not agree to an extension and Afghans would be stopped from going to the airport. There is danger that people will lose their life in the chaos there, he told reporters. However, there has been confusion about whether this meant Afghans with full travel documents would be unable to leave the country. Mr. Mujahid also said that working women in Afghanistan must stay at home until proper systems are in place to ensure their safety. Our security forces are not trained in how to deal with women, how to speak to women, for some of them, he said. Until we have full security in place, we ask women to stay home. The Taliban enforced a strict version of Islamic law when they ran Afghanistan before 2001. Since their return to power, they have tried to convey a more restrained image, promising rights for women and girls and some freedom of speech. But UN Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet said there were credible reports of human rights abuses by the Taliban, including summary execution, restrictions on women and recruitment of child soldiers. The UN Human Rights Council on Tuesday endorsed a resolution affirming its unwavering commitment to the rights of women and girls. But the resolution did not recommend the appointment of a special UN investigator for Afghanistan, which many human rights groups had called for.